Okay, this is from Chicago Public Media, CST. Sore throat. The Church of Scientology and the 1970s plot against the American Medical Association. In an excerpt from his book, Contain and Eliminate, former Sun-Times reporter Howard Walensky writes the Chicago whistleblower with the church went after the AMA by contributor Howard Walensky, November 27, 2020. In the 1970s, major institutions from the White House down were being challenged. The environmentalists known as the Fox exposed Chicago's corporate polluters. Deep Throat helped the Washington Post expose the Watergate scandal and bring down President Richard M. Nixon. In 1975, a Chicago whistleblower known as Sore Throat, a takeoff on Bob Woodward's Deep Throat, gave reporters incriminating documents taken from the Chicago-based American Medical Association. He claimed to be a medical doctor, fired from the AMA staff in a massive layoff, known to insiders as the May Day Massacre, brought on by the group's precarious finances. He turned out to be a spy for L. Ron Hubbard and the Church of Scientology, which had the AMA on its enemies list. Dr. Throat, as he called himself, gave reporters key documents stolen by spies who had infiltrated the AMA's executive offices. That revealed the organization was evading millions in taxes and running a secret campaign to try to put chiropractors and other alternative healers out of business. Former Chicago Sun-Times medical writer Howard Walensky tells that story in the new book, Contain and Eliminate: The American Medical Association's Conspiracy to Destroy Chiropractic, Louis Bortelli. The following excerpt is taken from the book, which will be available via the website, containandeliminate.com. Might be worth a read. A cloud hung over the offices of the American Medical Association in the summer of 1975, or more accurately, clouds. Contain and Eliminate: The American Medical Association's Conspiracy to Destroy Chiropractic. Imagine the mentality, you guys. Does this remind you of Hegelian dialectic? Does this remind you of divide and conquer? A complete hatred book, but you know. The nation's largest physician group faced bankruptcy. Staff morale was at a low following the layoffs on the May Day Massacre, and membership numbers were plummeting. The AMA was not as invincible as many believed. Then there was Sore Throat, the supposed former AMA physician who claimed he had been laid off and now was leaking AMA secrets to the media and government agencies. The leaks had triggered 4 congressional investigations and had exposed the AMA. Listen to that again closely. The leaks had triggered 4 congressional investigations investigations and had exposed the AMA to more than $20 million in back taxes, just as AMA coffers were nearly empty and its tax-free status was in jeopardy. Interesting. Dr. James Summons, the AMA scrappy CEO, was trying to save the sinking ship amidst rumors that he was following orders from the prison cell of an AMA board chairman who had been convicted of bank fraud. Things were in shambles. Soon, Sore Throat would disclose AMA documents exposing its plan to contain and eliminate the chiropractic profession. And Dr. Chester Wilk, the chiropractor pushed and guided by Sore Throat, would be taking on the AMA in an antitrust suit. Who was this Sore Throat? The question ate away at the leadership of the AMA. Was he indeed a former AMA doctor gone rogue? A few doctors laid off in the May Day massacre fit the description of Sore Throat. Or did he come from somewhere other than the ranks of the AMA? Dr. Chester Wilk, seen here in 1992, was one of 4 chiropractors whose lawsuit led to a ruling that the American Medical Association tried to destroy a competitor. That's from Sun Times. Identifying Sore Throat became a guessing game among AMA executives, but it was a serious matter. Sammons and his executive staff needed to stop the leaks. Sammons and his lieutenants observed that the leaked documents were in many cases old, dating back to the 1960s. But after the AMA dismissed them as ancient history, Sore Throat began leaking recent documents and telling reporters things only a current insider could know. He told reporters that the AMA had hired a private investigator to plug the leaky AMA, and also that select staffers were undergoing polygraph tests. Sammons now thought Sore Throat came from the AMA or had access to a current staffer. New York Daily News reporter Judith Randall wrote that the AMA tried to have the Chicago office of the FBI investigate the leaks. This effort was unsuccessful. However, because the FBI said that no violation of federal law was at stake, she reported on August 5, 1975. Meanwhile, Jack Bierg, a 28-year-old attorney at Sidley Austin, the AMA's external legal counsel, recognized that some leaked documents revealed in the press were Sidley's confidential work relating to the AMA that somehow had been stolen from Sidley's Chicago headquarters. The AMA-Sidley relationship began in 1974. AMA General Counsel Bernard Hirsch approached Newton Minow, a partner at the prominent Chicago-based firm, to represent the AMA against the federal government in a suit involving Medicare regulations. It was the first time the AMA sued the federal government. Bierg said there was no formal discipline of health law in those days, but Sidley wanted to demonstrate its health expertise. Bierg was tapped to represent the AMA because he had handled food and drug cases for Sidley and also had written a pioneering paper about for-profit healthcare delivery as he finished his JD at Harvard Law School. U.S. District Judge Julius Hoffman, seen in a 1969 photo, was well known as the judge in the Chicago 7 case and also had heard the case against the American Medical Association. The Chicago native won the case for the AMA before Judge Julius J. Hoffman, the short, combative jurist famed for tangling with lawyers and defendants in the Chicago 7 trial in 1969 to 70, in which the defendants, including Abby Hoffman and Jerry Rubin, were charged with conspiring to cross state lines to incite riots at the 1968 Democratic Convention in Chicago. Bierig didn't know if burglars had broken into the AMA and Sidley offices, or if moles had been planted in the offices to copy and steal AMA documents. He recommended that the AMA and Sidley hire a private eye. He asked for help from his boss, Minow, the former head of the Federal Communications Commission under President John F. Kennedy, who famously described commercial television as a vast wasteland. The lost charter boat SS Minnow on the 1960s sitcom Gilligan's Island was a mocking tribute to Minnow. I actually would agree with him on that in many ways. In a 2018 interview in a conference room in Sidley's downtown Chicago office, with Lake Michigan in the distance, Bierig said he approached Minow. He recalled, "I'll never forget this," Minow says. "Okay, hire a detective." And I said, "Newt, what am I supposed to do? Look in the yellow pages under detectives? I have no idea who would be appropriate." He said, "It was your idea, carry it out." And that's attorney Newton Minow from Sun-Times. Perry Mason, the pop fiction attorney of Erie Stanley, Gardner's books, radio, TV, and movies, always had his PI. Perry Mason had Paul Drake. Bierig said, adding he had never encountered a PI at Sidley. Sidley, founded in Chicago in 1866 with Mary Todd Lincoln, President Abraham Lincoln's widow, among its first clients, is a white shoe law firm with a blue chip clientele. It didn't handle the likes of Perry Mason's clientele, who typically were being defended for murk, with P.I. Drake coming through for Mason at the last minute. Was sore throat a one-person operation, as he told the press, or was he a part of something bigger? Bierig wanted to know and wanted to stop the leaks, but didn't know which way to turn. He finally sought advice from Marlon Johnson, head of security of one of his clients, Canteen Corporation. Johnson had first-hand experience with counterintelligence, planting spies, and even taking on the mafia. Johnson had been head of the FBI's Chicago field office. Did you catch that, guys? Johnson had deep expertise in the shadowy world and seemed like a good resource in the search for sore throat. In the tumultuous late 1960s, J. Edgar Hoover, the longtime director of the FBI, had asked Johnson to neutralize what he saw as threats to the country. One was the Black Panther Party, a black revolutionary group. COINTELPRO. The FBI operation resulted in a 1969 raid by Chicago police and the FBI on the Panthers' shabby. You see how they frame stuff? See that? On the Panthers' shabby headquarters on Chicago's west side. 90 rounds were emptied into the building. 2 Panthers lost their lives in a blaze of G-fire. The FBI had an informant inside the Panthers. It's because they sent him in. Hoover also asked Johnson to enlist the help of the mafia to neutralize Dick Gregory, the Chicago comedian and presidential candidate for the Peace Party in 1968. Hoover didn't understand Gregory's jokes, especially about the FBI chief, and saw him as a genuine threat. The affable and discreet Johnson told Hoover that he would do what he could, but wisely, Johnson did nothing. Jack Bierig didn't have experience with private investigators, so he turned to an expert. And that's from Howard Walensky. Bierig described Johnson as a very nice man. I called Marlin up and I said, Marlin, you've got to help me. I need to hire a detective. I have no idea what to do. Got any ideas? Johnson referred Bierig to 2 detective agencies, one of which was the Pinkerton Detective Agency, which provided security to Lincoln during the Civil War and also made its name by infiltrating unions on behalf of America's biggest corporations. But both Pinkerton and the other agency took a pass on the AMA, Sidley job, saying it wasn't the sort of thing they did anymore, said Bierig. One of the companies referred him to Thomas Spinell, 36, a hungry private eye. Bierig called Spinell and described the issue, and Spinell said, I'd be happy to handle this. This would be great, Bierig recalled. Before pulling the trigger on the job, Bierig called a big meeting at the AMA's Chicago headquarters that included Minnow AMA executive, Vice President James Sammons, General Counsel Hirsch, and some Sidley honchos. The group decided to hire Spinell to plug the leaks at the AMA and Sidley. Spinell ordered lie detector tests starting at the AMA's Washington office and used other counterintelligence tools to try to unearth sore throat and boost security. The AMA did not make the investigation public, but Sore Throat knew about it and tipped William Hines, science and health reporter in the Washington bureau of the Chicago Sun-Times. William Hines, who was a reporter in the Sun-Times. Hines had a field day with Spinell, who he revealed had flunked his Illinois licensing exam as a private investigator twice in 1975. In February and May, the latest just months before he had been hired for the AMA job, the Secret Service confirmed Spinell had worked for the agency for 3 years, ending in 1973, but wouldn't say why Spinell had left. Hines reported, Spinell came off like a bumbling gumshoe. AMA spokesman David Baldwin confirmed that Spinell had interviewed AMA employees and used lie detector tests. The PR guy said that he himself had taken and passed a polygraph. Randall reported that at least 20 top AMA executives and staff had undergone lie detector tests. Sore Throat taunted the AMA when he told Hines in a phone interview, they're looking in the wrong place. I have no direct contacts here in Washington. My principal contact is in Chicago and passed the test with flying colors. One of the Sun-Times reporter William Hines' stories on Sore Throat. Sore Throat, in part, was telling the truth. The part about his Washington contacts inside the AMA having passed their polygraph exams, but he was trying to misdirect the investigation with claims about Spinell looking in the wrong place. Two years later, Los Angeles Times reporter Robert Rawitch and Robert Gillette, who had been following Scientology closely, reported on August 27, 1977, that Spinell found the AMA had hired 3 secretaries who were Church of Scientology moles, 1 in Chicago and 2 in Washington. Despite how he was portrayed, Spinell was the real deal. He was the one who picked up the first solid clues that the Church of Scientology appeared to be behind Sore Throat and the leaks driven by founder L. Ron Hubbard's conviction that the AMA had an ongoing plan to destroy his contentious church. Hubbard and his goons didn't expect to find that the AMA was gunning for chiropractic rather than Scientology. In Chicago, AMA officials acknowledged administering lie detector tests to 4 employees thought to have had access to the documents Sore Throat had made public. Among those tested was a secretary named Sherry Cannavaro, who had joined the AMA 4 months earlier to work in the executive offices, the Los Angeles Times reported. Confidential minutes from meetings of the AMA Board of Trustees were found in Cannavaro's desk in the AMA's executive offices in Chicago, and it was determined that she had spent 4 or 5 weekends at work with no specifically assigned task, the sources said. The AMA refused to discuss the polygraph results beyond a statement in which the association confirmed everyone passed. However, Cannavaro's duties were later reduced, and subsequently she resigned. Cannavaro was a Scientology plant. Her experience with Scientology's e-meter, an electronic device similar to a polygraph, used in Scientology's auditing procedure, might have helped her pass the polygraph test by Spinell. In a July 1977 affidavit, the FBI said Cannavaro also used the name Sherry Herman in Sandy Cooper and described her as the Pacific Secretary of the Church's Guardian's Office. There you go. In the United States, the Guardians were the espionage and dirty tricks arm of the Church of Scientology. Don't you guys wonder who really did design it? Cannavaro later owned a PI agency, a common profession for those who had worked in the Guardian's office. On her job application to the AMA, sources said, she listed her husband, Mitchell Herman, who was a Scientology operative, and a local Chicago reference, the mother of the man who would later be revealed to be Sore Throat. Sore Throat and the rest of his crew were tied to the Guardian's office. None of this was known in 1975 when Spinell conducted his investigation. Herman, who the FBI had said worked for Sore Throat and ran the spies in Scientology's covert operations in Washington, D.C., from January 1st, 1974 through March 1st, 1975, was among the 11 persons. Notice, Scientology Corporation wasn't named. Isn't that funny? Among the 11 persons indicted by a federal grand jury August 15, 1975, on charges of burglarizing government offices. Church spokesman told the Los Angeles Times they thought Cannavaro was on leave from their staff and that she was not interested in discussing these allegations with reporters. Cannavaro was not charged in the matter. A federal grand jury indictment charged that Herman, also known as Mike Cooper, and 2 other Scientology agents bugged a high-level meeting of the IRS in Washington, November 1st, 1974, in which the church's tax-exempt status was being reviewed by the IRS General Counsel. The church responded to Spinell's findings with tongue-in-cheek. Whoever Sore Throat is should get a medal. Jeffrey DeBron, a church spokesman, said, he added, I don't know who that person was. If this person went in and lied to get a job in the AMA and exposed crimes and created change, should that person be prosecuted for his or her actions? Scientologist or not, Sore Throat's AMA disclosures prompted investigations by congressional committees, the Post Office, the Federal Election Commission, and the IRS, but resulted in no convictions. Don't you guys wonder why that is? Don't you wonder why that is? No convictions against the AMA. The AMA eventually paid some back taxes. But the negative headlines tarnished the AMA's image. Before her employment at the AMA, Cannavaro worked from 1972 through 1974 for the Washington-based Council of Better Business Bureaus, philanthropic advisory section dealing with tax-exempt organizations. Of course she did. Local bureaus had in the past questioned Scientology's recruitment approaches, especially of the kids, and people seeking refunds. Sources in the council said that in 1974, Cannavaro persuaded officials to open their files on Scientology to her husband, Mitchell. The sources said she identified him as a freelance writer preparing a story critical of the church. Cannavaro resigned from the council on December 31st, 1974, and moved on to the AMA. Cannavaro did not respond to several calls and emails requesting interviews. Spinell may have flunked his PI test, but the former Secret Service agent quickly sleuthed what turned out to be a campaign against the AMA perpetuated by a spy ring whose members managed to be hired for clerical jobs at the AMA and Sidley, including a secretary to a top AMA executive. A former AMA staffer said the spy worked for Wayland Strobar, a senior AMA executive. Beering said the PI checked phone calls made to and from the AMA in Sidley and found that they led to a phone for the Church of Scientology. Scientology plants had been going through and copying confidential AMA files for about 18 months. You notice the numbers in here? You notice the numbers? AMA files for about 18 months before Sore Throat began making the findings public in June 1975. Look at the little drug addict black tooth. Apparently he was an alcoholic as well. In response to its discovery, the AMA launched its own media campaign against Scientology. In August 1975, Stuart Auerbach of the Washington Post reported that AMA officials privately accused the Church of Scientology of planting its spies in AMA offices. Both Sore Throat and the Church of Scientology denied that Sore Throat represented Scientology, while the AMA officials have refused to make these charges publicly. Their views became so widely known that the Scientologists have issued an official denial through their Ministry of Public Relations, Auerbach reported. The anonymous man who had been passing on the AMA documents, nicknamed Sore Throat by reporters, called the Washington Post to deny that he is a plant of the Scientologists and to insist that he will continue to make AMA documents public. Chris Volz of Scientology Ministry of Public Relations wrote in a letter to the Washington Post, the covert allegations by AMA officials Joe Brew and Frank Campion, the AMA's chief public relations men, are illustrative of an incredibly corrupt organization grasping in the dark to cover their crimes. Oh, Scientologists are obsessed with crimes. The Church of Scientology does not foster or house this sore throat, Volz said. It was a lie, one of many. Ironically, it took these lies for the truth to become known about the AMA's campaign to contain and eliminate chiropractic. I will leave a link in the description box. Like and subscribe if you choose. Otherwise, have an amazing day or night wherever you are. Peace.